This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Curaleaf, one of the nation's fastest growing multi-state cannabis operators with 44 local dispensaries, 12 cultivation sites, and 11 processing facilities serving more than 150,000 registered medical marijuana patients. Learn more about Curaleaf over at curaleaf.com, with Curaleaf spelled C-U-R-A-L-E-A-F. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, May 17th, 2019, and you're tuned in to episode 725 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We kick off today's headlines in Massachusetts, which actually grabs our top two stories. The first being the news that the state's Cannabis Control Commission voted yesterday in favor of a proposal to open up the state for legal public social use businesses. The first commercial cannabis consumption spaces will consist of cafes that will be free to sell marijuana to patrons for use on site. The 5-member commission voted 3-2 in favor of the plan, which does not, as of yet, have any hard timelines on when cafes will actually be rolled out. Commission Chair Stephen Hoffman said that it's going to take a while when he said, quote, "It's going to take a while," unquote. Boston.com is a good write-up on this one with more details on what cafes will look like once they do get up and running. A few highlights are rules banning patrons both from bringing in outside cannabis for consumption as well as bringing home any marijuana not consumed during a visit. The consumption of edibles will also be capped at 20 milligrams per visit per person. Our second story today springs up out of the same meeting held yesterday by the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, this time with a focus on the commission's review of requests made by dispensary owners to transfer ownership of their businesses to other companies. As any industry matures, early market operators tend to sell out to other companies and to new market participants, and in Massachusetts, the first requests for the sale of medical marijuana dispensaries are starting to bubble up. During yesterday's meeting, the commission received the first such request from medical marijuana operator Sara Naturals, which is in the process of being acquired by Canadian company Cannabis Strategies Acquisition Corporation. This is one of our top stories today because I think we're going to see a lot more of these kinds of requests and because of the interesting and unique nature of the Massachusetts licensing system. Not a bad story to open up to read in full. Kyle Yeager over at Marijuana Moment has our final top story of the day and the week with pickup of news out of Washington, D.C. of a new proposed bill that would make a number of positive changes to the system by which young people apply for financial aid for college. Chief among those changes, at least for our audience here, is a provision that would remove a question on the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, asking whether applicants have been convicted of drug-related charges. Answering yes to that question can put an applicant's financial aid in jeopardy, which is easily one of the dumber ideas generated by prohibitionists. This is an idea that's been around for a long time, as it's one of the early factors contributing to the growth of the student drug reform movement back in the late 90s and early aughts. Students for Sensible Drug Policy, which I started the first chapter of back in 1997, was actually all over this issue pretty much from the start, as soon as it became a thing in 98. So this is a BS issue with roots. Another good story that I'd recommend reading today. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Curaleaf, one of the nation's fastest growing multi-state cannabis operators with 44 local dispensaries, 12 cultivation sites, and 11 processing facilities serving more than 150,000 registered medical marijuana patients. Curaleaf is also now traded as a public stock on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the symbol CURA. You can swing over to curaleaf.com to learn more about Curaleaf the stock and to dive into more about their popular Curaleaf medical marijuana line, Curaleaf Hemp, and Yuku Craft Cannabis. And since Curaleaf is operational in so many U.S. states now, there's probably a Curaleaf shop close to you. Big thanks to everyone at Curaleaf for supporting today's show and for helping us keep the news lights on. One more time, that's curaleaf.com, spelled C-U-R-A-L-E-A-F. All right, time for the Blitz. The provincial government of Quebec, Canada, just announced that it is pulling back from previously announced plans to ban marijuana smoking and vaping in outdoor public spaces where the consumption of tobacco is allowed. David Downs and Bruce Barcott over at Leafly continue to piece out wisdom from their recently released 25-page report on the impact that legal marijuana dispensaries have on their local and state communities. Today's story looks at California counties in the context of their population and whether or not they allow for commercial marijuana retailing. The list reveals that generally, counties with higher populations are allowing for legal marijuana sales, while those with smaller pockets of citizens are likely to ban cannabis stores. Zip over to Bruce and David's story for more there. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. WeedMaps grabs a spot on today's headlines with a good look at one of my personal industry pet peeves, and that's the wide-scale belief in the false Sativa and Indica strain model. There's a pervasive belief among cannabis consumers as well as industry players that some strains can be classified as sativas, which have different effects than those that can be categorized as indica. That's a bunch of crap. Scientifically speaking, of course. The realities of cannabis categorization are way more complex than that and have more to do with terpenes and terpenoids than any kind of easy binary sativa-indica breakdown. WeedMaps looks at this issue through the frame of industry marketing and comes around to the position that the industry itself might just not be ready to throw off sativa and indica, mostly because there's no easy, better alternative. CTV News is reporting that prospective cannabis cultivators in Canada will be required to actually build out their grow facilities before they're approved to grow, meaning there will be a period where they're required to gamble the financial costs of building out such a space without knowing yet whether they'll be licensed to cultivate. That's not such a big problem for well-financed corporate operations, but it makes it harder, if not impossible, for individual craft cannabis startups to compete. The Canadian government is currently holding public hearings on cultivation rules and regulations and is hearing from a lot of craft cannabis growers about the problems with the licensing program. Yesterday, a House committee in Washington, D.C. released a proposed measure that would extend protections to state legal medical marijuana and industrial hemp operators and users from federal prosecution. As Kyle Yeager over Marijuana Moments astutely points out, the inclusion of the protection language in the measure is a first, as in past years, similar language has been introduced only as a floor amendment later in the legislative process. Kyle's piece on this is good if you want more detail here. We return to Massachusetts for our third headline in today's stories, this time with an editorial from the Boston Globe calling for the launch of zero-interest loans to people participating in the state's marijuana economic empowerment program to be used to start up their cannabis businesses. We've covered this storyline a lot here on The Daily, as Massachusetts has taken a leadership role in developing its marijuana programs with social justice ideals in the forefront, but has also found the challenges of enforcing those ideals to be significant. As it stands now, none of the 120 participants in the Massachusetts Economic Empowerment Program have been able to get their businesses up and running, and publicly organized low-interest loans would be a big boost in enabling participation. Make sure to give this one a read today as well. And finally, for today and for the week, we have a story with an obvious need of disclosure as it concerns our friends over at KCSA Communications, which we produce the Green Rush podcast for. KCSA just announced that it will be holding a forum this Tuesday, May 21st in Washington, D.C. from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. to discuss various topics around legal cannabis. The forum is being held in coordination with the Cannabis Caucus, a group of pro-marijuana lawmakers, and will feature speakers like Oregon Representative Earl Blumenauer, Jessica Billingsley of MJ Freeway, and our very own Chris Crane, a longtime regular on our weekly show Marijuana Today and president of multi-state operator Forefront. I'm also going to be there for this event, as we'll be recording the whole thing for use on air. Podcast air. Open up Yahoo Finance for the full run of show. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Cureleaf, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.